Kristen, thank you so much for doing this with us today. I'm so grateful to you and so proud of you because it went so well for the side of sanity today. Give me your take. I gave the audience my quick back of the envelope, but your take is more important and more informed than mine.
Well, I loved hearing your take first because I feel like we're all somewhat emotionally invested in it, but when you're sitting in it and you kind of know the ins and outs, let's just start with the court. I mean, I think overall I agree with your take. 6-3 is probably the way it will result with some concurrences as well. I think that the argument went very well. I was surprised at, well, maybe not surprised, but delighted by some of the ACLU's concessions. They essentially rolled back their arguments on Title IX altogether, even saying that the lower court decision that they won under was wrong. So that's great. I think that the veil was brought back on the fact that they refused to even define what sex is. So I'm not sure how you can find sex discrimination if you can't articulate what sex is.
That was crazy. Put a pin in that, audience, because we are definitely coming back to that issue. Yeah. Keep going.
And then, I mean, I don't know. I'm really curious to see what you think about this. And maybe it's because, like, we have been living these cases out from, we started in about 2015. First big stuff comes up 2017, where 2 boys take 15 state championships from girls. So that's how long we've been in this. And I've been with these female athletes. You've interviewed them. And we have the privilege of representing 3 that are in that case. And I wanted so badly to just stand up and scream, why are we not talking about the women here? I don't want to hear about Hecox or BPJ. I want to talk about these girls, the girls that are impacted.
Yes.
And it just, that's probably what made me most upset.
That just gave me the chills. That just gave me the chills when you said that. There were multiple times, and it did dawn on me, Kristen, that like the Supreme Court is really one of the last few places where there's true decorum that is maintained. You know, it is very formal. You are expected to behave. Every reporter had a suit on. It's not casual. Every guest that's in attendance there has got their Sunday best on. You may not stand up to stretch. You will sit there and you will obey the rules, or you will be promptly ejected. And I like that. I like that a lot. The judges come in their robes. It's all very formal. But I actually was tempted to break the protocol a couple of times to stand up and be like, what? Right? Like the nonsense when the lawyer for BPJ in the second case, this is a boy pretending to be a girl who wants the right to play in girls' sports, and said, the one thing you really shouldn't do in your ruling, because he was sensing that they were going to rule against him. And now this lawyer has switched to, let me limit my loss here so that it's just these 27 states can uphold their ban, but don't touch my 23 that affirmatively allow this. And so I think it was a Kagan, or was it Ketanji Brown Jackson, was like, tell us what not to rule. Like, tell us exactly how we're supposed to rule so that we can sort of protect these other rights. And he was like, for the love of God, don't define biological sex. What?
It's stunning, but that is their argument. I mean, we've got to look behind the curtain and know what is at issue in this. It is about biological reality, and it is about erasing the differences between men and women, and that cannot happen on our watch. It cannot happen. But, these girls that we're talking about, the opening argument of, BPJ is this 11-year-old that just wants to have fun. We should have compassion for BPJ. BPJ is obviously very confused, and we should treat BPJ with kindness. But let's be clear about this. BPJ has taken 423 girls have been affected and lost places since BPJ competed in middle school. 1,100 times this has happened, and he's taken 57 medals from the girls. So let's talk to those girls, like our client, Adelea Cross, who couldn't compete. She was in the top 3 on her team. He starts, throwing amazing, supposedly after puberty blockers, when all this is not supposed to have an advantage, at least from what we heard today. And instead is displacing all these girls. And now Adelea wasn't even able to compete in the competition. She was completely knocked out because, as Justice Kavanaugh said today, there's a limited number of spots.
That's right. He was good. Kavanaugh was good today. Gorsuch was a nightmare. Kavanaugh was good. Even Chief Justice Roberts was good. We have to talk about Gorsuch in a second. But the thing on BPJ is, if you listen to just today's argument, because his lawyers were up there saying, oh, he wasn't very good. And their briefs were like, he wasn't good. He barely made the track team. And then when he got on, he wasn't at the front of the pack. And like eventually after a lot of hard work, he moved up a little. But like you would really think this is a Charlie Brown of athletes, and none of those facts that you just said came out today in court. They left everybody there with the impression that this was like not even a middling athlete, and like, what are you complaining about? This poor guy was like this little weakling who barely made the team. But Kristen, wasn't this was the case at which I saw Riley Gaines with the shot putters who walked out of the shot put circle and said, I'm not competing against a boy. And he had started to dominate.
Megyn, there is so much to this case that, I mean, it's just, yes, it starts with our client, Adelaide Cross, was on the same team as BPJ, was competing in the top of the team and had these spots. And, you know, the first year when BPJ was in 6th grade, she was in 7th grade. And during that time, you know, she was still in the top spot. By the next year, she starts getting knocked out. BPJ allegedly is starting to throw 10 to 20 feet longer. And then all these girls are falling off because he's taking these spots in higher competition. Next thing you know, the 5 shot put or discus people were at a different school, actually, and they protested and said, we're not competing against a boy. It's not fair to make us do that. So this is not even BPJ's team or Adelaide's team. It's a completely different school protesting. And
yes,
those girls are punished by their school. Where is
for their
our
protest?
voice? Yes.
We're showing some of the girls. They got in the circle as though they were going to throw it, and then they walked out in protest, which takes so much guts. I mean, especially in this environment, it was an act of true courage for these girls to take a stand. Not mentioned at all today. And the number, like, what does the court have to go along with she pronouns for these boys? It was infuriating, Kristen, because of course it gets to the very issue of why we're all there. Reality matters. Actual fact, biological pronouns mattered. But the whole court went along with the lie today by using she, her pronouns.
Well, I wouldn't say the whole court did, but I would say some surprising justices did.
I didn't hear Alito do it. I didn't hear Thomas do it. But I definitely heard
Right.
Gorsuch do it. I think I heard Barrett do it. And I think I heard Kavanaugh do it.
It is. Language is so critical, and the court knows that. I mean, you know, majority of the court would consider themselves to be originalists and textualists, but at the same time, this decorum that you're talking about, no one wants to hurt people. No one wants to hurt their feelings or unnecessarily offend, and I think that's how this thing, you know, the women got steamrolled in the first place, is we don't want to have to confront and hurt people. But I think we're getting confused about what compassion and kindness actually looks like, because it can't exist without truth. And so you're right. I mean, even the idea of having to keep track of cisgender and transgender girls versus, I mean, it's mental gymnastics in the courtroom.
I find cisgender girl and cisgender woman a slur. I recoil when I hear that, and I heard it about 12 times today from Ketanji Brown Jackson, who, of course, was unable to define what a woman is during her Supreme Court confirmation hearing, and once again today seemed very focused on how to get around defining women and get around a ruling that would help women in any way, which she sensed, as I think you and I did, is coming from the majority.
Well, remember that in her nomination, when she answered that question of she couldn't answer what a woman was, she said she'd need to talk to a biologist. And fortunately, the record is chock full of them in these cases. There is ample science, real biologists that actually know what it means to be a woman and can define it. And I believe the court will uphold biological reality in these cases. But man, if today is not a reminder that we have much more work to do. And
yes.
Again, in the Idaho case, as an example, we represent 2 athletes who were beaten many times by a man at the collegiate level who took the Big Sky Championship. So, you know, there's so many different women that have suffered as a result. And of course, we haven't even started talking about locker rooms.
I know, exactly. That's not really at issue here. A new year means new financial goals, like making sure your savings are secure and diversified. Will this be the year you decide to talk to someone from Birch Gold Group? They use an educational approach with a deep understanding of macroeconomics. There are forces pushing the dollar lower and gold higher, which is why they believe every American should own physical gold. So until July 30th, January until January 30th. If you're a first-time gold buyer, Birch Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 on qualifying purchases. To claim eligibility and start the process, you just text MK to the number 989898. Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and you are still eligible for a rebate of up to $10,000. Consider making right now your first time to buy gold and take advantage of a rebate up to $10,000 when you buy before January 30th. Text MK to the number 989898. Claim your eligibility today. Again, text MK to 989898. So let me just play this moment where Alito called BS on BPJ's lawyer, who was trying to say, whatever you do in this opinion, do not define biological sex. Because, of course, he knew this is going to seal our fate in many cases. God forbid they just say that a woman has a certain set of gametes and a man has a different set of gametes. The women's will turn into ovaries, the man's will turn into testes, period. Or a woman can have a baby, or a woman has XX chromosome, whatever. They don't want that. And Alito was the first one to break the dam because this guy was getting away with it. Like, the last thing you should do is this. And Alito brought some sense, and then I was pleased to hear the Chief Justice tag team in, like, yeah, what Alito said. Here's that moment.
And what is that definition for equal protection purposes? What does it mean to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. I think that the underlying enactment, whatever it was, the policy, the law, we'd have to have an understanding of how the state or the government was just understanding that term to figure out whether or not someone was excluded. We do not have a definition for the court, and we don't take issue with we're not disputing the definition here. What we're saying is that the way it applies in practice is to exclude birth sex males categorically from women's teams, and that there's a subset of those birth sex males where it doesn't make sense to do so according to the state's own interest.
Well, how can a court determine whether there's discrimination on the basis of sex without knowing what sex means for equal protection purposes?
I think here we just know that we basically know that that they've identified pursuant to their own statute, Lindsay qualifies as a birth sex male, and she's being excluded categorically from the women's teams as the statute. So we're taking the statute's definitions as we find them, and we don't dispute them.
Okay, that was in the first case, Hecox, and then it happened again in the second case with BPJ when there was a male attorney up there. We'll play that in a second.
Title IX prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex. It's a statutory term. It must mean something. You're arguing that here there's discrimination on the basis of sex. And how can we decide that question without knowing what sex means in Title IX? I mean, it could mean biological sex. It could mean gender identity. It could mean whatever a state wants to define it to mean. But it has to mean something. How can we decide that without knowing what the statutory term means?
Well, I think there are a whole range of sex-based characteristics that can give rise to discrimination. I think if someone said, I'm going to discriminate against anyone who acts in a feminine manner, like anyone with limp wrists, I don't care who they are, but I'm going to discriminate against them. Like, I think that would be sex discrimination. It would be sort of gender presentation. But I wouldn't say that's not covered by Title IX. And so I'm not saying that biological differences aren't part of sex.
You don't think we should have an operating definition of sex in Title IX? Now, I understand the idea that the question then becomes not whether or not there's discrimination on the basis of sex, but whether there's discrimination on the basis of whatever characteristic you think should be included in the definition of sex. Now, when it's used as a statutory term, I'm not sure you have that kind of flexibility. The question would be instead, what does Congress think the word means?
But that's really what it comes down to, right, Kristen? And do you think that they will have the courage to do the very basic work of defining what biological sex means in order to determine a case in which these bans are based on biological sex?
I think it's going to be very challenging to resolve the equal protection claim without bringing some sort of definition in on sex and it being related to biological sex. I mean, under the Equal Protection Clause, the whole threshold is when the legislature draws lines, are they drawing those lines so that they're treating similarly situated people similarly? And so the biological distinctions here matter greatly, and I think that you have to define it for equal protection purposes, and we all know what it means. The only person that doesn't seem to know are progressive left activists who are actually trying to erase the rights of women and girls across this nation. Title VII also, I think you just look at the statute, which says, is there sex-based discrimination? And the statute itself anticipates that you will separate the sexes based on athletics as well as in living facilities. Because, again, they know what biological sex means and what it meant when the law was passed. So I think the court may not want to fully go there in this, but I think you almost have to resolve it. And I sure hope they do. I mean, I just kept thinking, Megyn, 10 more years of this is insanity.
No. I mean, girls are getting hurt by the day, by the second. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.